Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Welcome, listeners, and thanks for joining the podcast today. I'm your host, Bryan O'Rourke. And before we get started with our guest, Alex Peacock, I'd like to remind you I will be at IRSA March 21st to 22nd, and that is in San Diego. Please join me Tuesday at 2 p.m. for my talk, What's Next? It's probably going to be, I think, one of the most important talks I've given in the last 15 years on what's coming up in the next decade in the industry space. I hope to see you there. Also at Europe Health and Fitness Forum, April 12th in Cologne as part of FIBO. I'll also be participating in the World Active Forum event with Adam Vinatieri and Grace McNamara from Apple Friday on a roundtable. That'll be great, and look forward to seeing you all there. Also, be on the lookout for FITC's research report that will be published next month, and our awards for the Technology Innovation 2023 Awards, where we'll be recognizing leading brands and professionals for their contributions. Please look in the show notes for links to all of these different events, and I hope to see you there, and I hope you participate. Oh, one last thing. We have a great webinar coming up on the future of content in early March. Please look at the show notes as well for links and descriptions below. I hope you participate. So let's talk a little bit about Alex Peacock. I've known Alex for many years. Saw him last in Amsterdam at the Fit Nation event, which was fantastic. And Alex has a pretty extensive background with Amersport, Sweatworks, Zoom Media, Netpulse, and more recently with his partner founding LeisureLabs, in his active role in helping brands navigate technology and produce and improve products in the digital space. Alex has worked with a lot of brands over his career and shares his insights on things like legacy technology burden cost, what's going on with the future, some of his advice on technology, how to consider different aspects of it. I think you'll find it to be both pragmatic, insightful, and fun. So without further ado, let's welcome Alex to the podcast. Well, listeners, as I was saying in the intro, we have the great privilege of chatting with longtime friend and colleague, Alex Peacock. Alex, good afternoon. You're calling us from the UK this morning, I guess.
I am, yes. Morning for you, afternoon for me. So yeah, great to speak, and thanks so much for having me on the show today.
Yeah, I loved seeing you in Amsterdam at the Fit Nation event. We didn't get much chance to talk because I was suffering from jet lag, as I explained afterwards. Do you ever get that? I know you travel a lot internationally, so you go to a show and you're kind of half out of it when you're doing your presentation. You remember that?
Yeah, it's the 4 o'clock syndrome, 4 p.m. whichever time zone you're in. I hear you. Don't worry, it'll be my turn next time we meet at IRSA.
I can't wait. So, Alex, we were talking in the intro, and before we get started, for listeners who don't know about your background, could you share a little bit of that with us? I think it's going to help build a little context around our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the fitness technology sector for I guess just over 20 years at this point. So I started out in the early 2000s. Working with a brand called Clubcom at the time, and back then they were part of Precor actually, and this was a digital media product, so in-club TV and digital advertising for health clubs, and I joined them in the early 2000s to set up their business in Europe. So it was a US company. I was running the European business there. Scaled that and ran it for about 10 years. And then I joined Netpulse in 2015 with a similar story, actually. So at that time, they were a US company. They just got into the branded mobile app space for the fitness industry. So I came in to set up their international business, set up an office in London, and scaled the international business. And then ultimately took over as CEO for the Netpulse business. And saw that through. We were acquired by eGym in 2018. And at that time, we were working with about 10,000 health clubs around the world of all shapes and sizes. So everything from the largest groups in the world to individual operators and everything in between. So I went through that. I stayed with eGym for a few years after that to help integrate the business, and that's now still going from strength to strength as their digital platform. And then over the last couple of years, I worked for a year or so with a brand called Sweatworks, which is a hardware sort of product development agency for connected fitness products. They've been through a growth stage, so I worked with the founder there very closely to sort of help him with the scale up and implementing sort of scalable processes and so on. And then I founded LeisureLabs last year. So I've really been in the kind of scale up fitness technology space for really all of my career. That's the part that I enjoy.
So, we talk about tech. You see a guy like me on stage talking about tech and trends, and I would like to kind of characterize you in an overly simplistic way, Alex, is the guy behind the curtain who actually can help make the stuff actually do the things I describe in these presentations. Would that be fair?
Yeah. I'm happy to stay in the background and figure it all out.
Somebody's got to do the real work.
Oh yeah.
And so we were laughing, well, not laughing, but really contemplating, maybe a little laughing, when we were on the intro call before our recording here. And I mentioned, Chat GPT, everybody's jumping up and down about how incredible it is. And it's a cool hat trick, right? But it's really not AI. And there's a lot that has to happen yet. It's I'm not trying to sound as though I'm not a fan of new tech innovation. I am, but then there's kind of the reality of the real world, right, Alex, where, like we were talking about, a number of very large respected operators in the commercial fitness space are operating tech stacks that might be 25, 30 years old. And, when I talk about hyper personalization or frictionless commerce or these concepts, there is this legacy debt that exists in our commercial fitness space where these ideas of delivering customer experience at another level are really burdened by the tech stack it's got to drag along into 2023. That becomes a real trick, and that's getting down to the whole build or buy dynamic. Can you opine on that a little bit and tell me what your experiences are and thoughts are around that, and then how you've seen that evolve when it comes to developing products and experiences for brands?
Yeah, absolutely, and that really speaks to the whole reason behind the company that I founded last year, which is I've worked on the platform side with Netpulse and others, and I've worked on the agency side as well, and it became really clear to me that when you're looking at making a software decision, you've got this buy or build decision to make. So on the one side, you've got platforms whose job it is to convince you that their product is going to deliver everything you need out of the box. It's going to solve all your problems immediately. And then on the other side, you've got some incredible agencies that will build great things for you, and they'll build exactly what you ask for. But their role is fundamentally to kind of convince potential customers that there is nothing in the market that meets your needs, and you have to build everything yourself. And so you have this sort of challenge, and the reality for most people is it is somewhere in the middle. And one of the things that often gets overlooked on the build side is it's one thing to build a product, but it's another thing to maintain it and renew it constantly. And that's where the tech debt problem comes in, because very often people look at a one-time investment in building a product, and 25 years later you're still there thinking, well, I built this thing, and I've accumulated all of this tech debt because I hadn't planned on the fact that I'm going to need to keep investing at the same rate just to keep up. And so when you're making this decision of do I build, do I buy, that's often overlooked. And so we founded LeisureLabs really out of that, to solve that problem. So our mission really is to provide brands with an alternative to the conventional build or buy. So what we believe is that actually in most cases there are a lot of great platform solutions out there which might solve 80% of your problems, and then we can help build all of that together, and then we can provide our own engineering and design resources to build that last 20%. And this was this is not necessarily a new thing. This was really how Salesforce's model has worked for a long time. They have a great platform, but their platform does what it does. And if you want to apply it to your business, then they will introduce you to an integrator who will help you customize it and do what you need. So ultimately, it's about the right thing to do in most cases is often a combination of build and buy. But I think what I would say on that is, when you're looking at that decision initially, the first thing is to look at what's in the market. Has the problem that you're looking to solve already been solved by somebody else? And if so, you're then, if it's been 100% solved, then you're very lucky. But in reality, if it's been 60% or more solved by somebody else, then you're probably better, buying something in and then focusing your energy on building the bits that don't exist, building the innovation, and then you can control and own the bits that are important to you without having to build the all of the back end and all of the pieces that already exist and may not have any value. And then of course the advantage of that is that all of that tech debt on the platform side is somebody else's problem. It's not your concern.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And when my dad, God bless him, he used to make the statement about change around these kind of things as being like changing the wheels of a car while it's going down the interstate at 70 miles an hour. So talk about that, the whole development process and how organizations wrestle with that. Like so let's say you've had a basic tech stack for 25 years, you may have tweaked, you're facing the fact that you've got to rethink this to do it a different way. What are some of the hard lessons that you've learned with people about undertaking these kind of initiatives, and where people can really go right and where they can really go wrong?
Well, I like something that I've heard you say quite a few times. There are no shortcuts.
Yes.
It's usually harder than you think. So it's easy to overestimate how simple something's going to be. But it's also easy to underestimate the impact it might have. If something is done well and something is implemented well, it can be really transformative to your business in ways that you didn't necessarily predict. But in terms of how to approach a product development project, one of the things that you may have heard the expression, we have three kinds of service: good, fast, and cheap, but you can only pick two. I like that expression because it articulates the three constraints that you have within developing any product, which is effectively time, scope, and budget. And invariably, you're going to be constrained by one or more of those factors. And so the first thing that you have to do is to figure out what the constraints are around time, scope, and budget. So do you have a finite budget that you need to fall within? Do you have a fixed time scale? Do you have to get something in market by a certain date? And do you have a must-have scope, a must-have set of features that have to be in there? So what are your non-negotiables in terms of time, scope, and budget? And what is the order of priority? So if budget is the absolute constraining factor, then you have to be prepared to maybe give a little on the features, give a little on the scope, or wait a little longer for things to happen. If the time is, you have a key event in your business that you have to hit, it has to be delivered on that date at all costs, then you have to be ready to maybe put a bit more money in to get you there. So the first thing that I always advise to think about is what are your constraints around those three factors, and which ones are you prepared to give on versus others, and that will really help set guardrails for the project.
That makes a lot of sense. And in my experience in doing this as well, people generally don't spend enough time up front fleshing all of that out. They generally, there's a kind of, in my experience, a bias to we got to do something. And then they don't, something happens, or, there's an event that occurs, or let's say, whatever it could be. I know you probably have a long list of those potential flashpoints that could happen. And then everyone's rushing to figure out, and there generally is less of a broad time spent on scoping those things that you just mentioned. Do you think that's generally true or no?
100%. I mean, a couple of points of observation there. One of them is a lot of times when people come up with what they think is a problem, it's actually a solution, because they've already formulated what they believe to be the solution in their head. And sometimes you have to try and peel back a little bit to understand the why and actually understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So it becomes really easy, because your business inside out, you sometimes automatically just jump straight to the solution. And what you actually need to do is to sort of take a step back and think, what are the goals here? What is the problem I'm trying to solve, rather than what do I think the solution might be? The old Henry Ford adage of, if I'd asked my customers what they want, they would have told me they wanted a faster horse. It's exactly that. That challenge. You think you know what you need, but actually you need to sort of peel back the onion a little bit.
Right.
And there are some good techniques for doing that. And whether it's working with an agency or a product expert that can help sort of run through a discovery process and unpack some of those challenges that you've got. Or there are some really simple tools that you can use. I'm a big fan of the business model canvas, the lean canvas, which is something that you can download for free online, and you can start to work through it, and it helps you. It's a much more effective way of unpacking, what are the top three problems, what are the solutions, possible solutions to those, and if you can use those kind of tools to help really define what you are looking to do, what your value proposition is for your product, then that investment up front will absolutely pay dividends down the road. If you're building a house, you don't just let the builder start on day one and hope for the best. You have your architects and designers do all of the work up front, so that when the actual work starts on site, everything is already clear in terms of what it's going to look like at the end.
Absolutely. And really, you mentioned Salesforce before. By the way, folks, we're going to put the business model generator links for Strategizer and that group in the show notes, because I've been a big fan of that as well, Alex. So that was a good suggestion for the audience. So you'd mentioned about Salesforce and this new realm of development where, I have a Salesforce customization company. You used the platform for many, many years, probably 16, 17 years. And now we have, as you mentioned, the business model of Salesforce, the ability to develop for that platform is a lot easier. It's you don't have to know straight on code. It's much different world of development. And that's really kind of a new component of development and development cycles, is this low code, no code dynamic, right? Where it's becoming, in certain development environments, less about the tech code and more about the logic of how the system's supposed to work. It's a little bit different in the speed. Tell us about low code, no code type of solutions and how that is helping people figure out the best answers.
Yeah, I think there are, the proliferance of low code and no code tools has really going to be game changing. It's already starting to see a huge impact. I think before I get into that, one of the things that is also an integral part of this is connectivity. And you mentioned Salesforce. The thing that they innovated with was connectivity. Their platform does what it does, but it provides so much capability for customization and connectivity with other platforms. So coming back to what we were talking about earlier with the buy or build decision, if you're looking at buying a piece of software, one of the things that you actually really need to study carefully and really consider is connectivity, interoperability. Is this going to work with other systems that I have? Can I write on top of it? Can I develop my own custom interfaces? Can I customize it in the way that I need to? So when it doesn't do what I need, I've got a way out of that problem. So that's a sort of an important part of that decision, is just thinking about connectivity, open APIs, ability to customize, and so on. But going back to your point about low code and no code, it's a really interesting topic. We've had a lot of discussion about this internally. I'm surrounded by amazing engineers who, in a lot of cases, are very purist, and an engineer will always have a better answer than a tool, and the old adage of your code is better than mine, said no engineer ever. Yep. They always have a very the correct practices in historically have always been, you can build it from the ground up and it's always going to be a better solution. But the reality is that some of these tools have really changed the game, and there's a couple of ways that low code and no code tools can really add a ton of value. There's always going to be space for engineers. There's always going to be a need to write code. That's not going away, quite the opposite. But in a lot of cases, these tools can be really helpful for things like rapid prototyping. So building a proof of concept. I want to test a product with a group of users and see if this is actually valuable, see what they like. You can build that with a low code or a no code tool in a matter of minutes. And so that allows you to sort of test hypotheses and start to think about, if this is valuable, then I will rebuild it. Or it allows you to do your first iteration of the product, knowing that at some point you're going to have to go back and rebuild it in a more robust way. One of the challenges there is very often customers will build the MVP, build the sort of hacky solution, and then forget to go back and re-architect it. But that's a different problem. That's back to our tech debt challenge. Yep. But rapid prototyping is really useful. But the other thing that we've seen, and we do a lot of work with low code tools internally and with our customers as well. And one of the ways that we use them is to build a foundation product that can then be customized by engineers later. And a lot of these low code tools are designed in such a way that they produce clean code that engineers can then go and modify. A good example of this is WordPress. I mean, WordPress has been around for a very long time. It's effectively a low-code tool because you can go in there as a novice or a designer and you can build a great WordPress website. But as an engineer, you can go in on the back end and you can change it and you can customize it and in any way you like. So that is how I see a lot of value as well, is you don't have to start with a completely, the days of writing low-level code from line by line that's going away fast. But what these tools allow you to do is to sort of build that foundation that engineers can then customize and make it what you want.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and hopefully that's going to lead to a lot better innovation. If people could take the time iterating around product concepts and making sure they fit the customer and really testing that out before they launch some massive initiative.
It reduces a lot of the barriers to innovation.
That's right.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and speed and figuring things out faster. Right, I agree with you. A big thing, Alex. We didn't really talk about this, so I'm gonna kind of hit you blind here. But what do you see? We see a lot of different trends in the commercial fitness space. We've seen all the quantified self movement to the personalization issues and things of that ilk. You've worked with companies like eGym, which has come through with more automation for their strength training in a personalized way. You see other companies doing different things. I think automation is a big area of opportunity in the space. Personally, I think customized, personalized, automated experiences are a big deal. What do you see as kind of the big area, a couple of the big rocks of innovation that you think are going to become significant in the next decade? Is there any one you'd point out, or two, or do you see it being 20 and it could be a combination of a lot of things? What do you think about that?
I think what a lot of these challenges lead us to is the ability to focus your innovation on things that will differentiate you. So as a business, if you're an operator, you're a consumer business, you're a brick and mortar business, you're not a technology company. You want to use technology as an enabler for your business. Your resources are finite, but what you don't want to have to do is spend all of your energy building technology that should be foundational. You want to focus every dollar that you spend on technology and on technology development on something that is going to help you innovate and differentiate yourself from your competitors. And so the advantage of all of these platforms and interoperability and the rise of low-code tools and so on and so forth all lead us down that path of, actually, I can just focus all of my energy on something that is unique to my brand, and I'm not going to end up with the same cookie cutter solution as every other operator in the market. So that's where I see a lot of this going, and that ties in with things like personalization. You can talk about AI all afternoon, but the reality is that the part of that matters is personalization. And so if you can figure out what are the building blocks that you need for CRM, for member management, for your app, for your website, then you can say, right, what can I do? How can I stitch these together in a way that is really unique? And I think that's going to be the most interesting development. All of these tools give us those capabilities, and I think, in years to come, what we'll see is really differentiated experiences, not just for members, but for operators. So one operator uses technology in a very different way from their competitors.
No, I agree with you. I agree with your your assessment. And I think that's good advice on where to focus as a brand. So, Alex, in wrapping up, I always ask people like you this question: what advice would you give professionals in the space? You've started a company in LeisureLabs. You work with a lot of different brands over the course of their development and life cycle in this space. Are there some pearls of wisdom you'd give our audience to keep in mind through their career and life journey in this commercial fitness space?
So I think one thing I would say is technology is very rarely a miracle cure. It's usually an accelerator. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So if you have an incredibly well-run business and you're doing amazing things and you're delivering an amazing customer experience in a really manual way, or you have a great business, but it's all built on spreadsheets, technology is going to help you scale that. It's going to help you move faster. It's going to help you be more efficient. It's going to help you scale. But if your business model is flawed and the foundations aren't there, or you don't have the details figured out, technology isn't going to fix that problem. And so I think it very often it can actually do the reverse, and it can it can cause you more problems because it disconnects you further from the problem. So I think that would be my piece of advice, is that we shouldn't ever think of technology as a miracle cure. It's just going to be a way of accelerating things. So you've got to be doing the right things, and then technology will help you do them better and faster.
That's good advice, and I agree with your perspective. Now, are we going to be seeing you in San Diego next month, Alex?
Absolutely. Yeah, can't wait to make it over. I will be in San Diego for URSA for sure, and then I guess we'll see each other a few weeks after that in Germany for FIBO as well.
Yes, that's correct. I'm going to see you at both spots. We'll put links in the show notes, of course, to LeisureLabs and your background, et cetera. And if there's anything that you'd like to, are you all going to have a booth? Or are you just going to be there at some of the events, or?
We'll just be there. So I'll be there with my co-founder Charles. We'll be at both events. We work with a lot of partners in the space, so we'll be supporting them on their booths as well. But yeah, looking forward to reconnecting with a lot of friends and old faces.
Well, that'll be great. I look forward to seeing you there, Alex. Thank you for sharing and your insights for the audience. I know it's greatly appreciated, and we really appreciate your thoughts on what's going on in tech today in the space.
It's a pleasure as always, and yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Bryan. It's great chatting today.
Same here.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.